Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. The topic of today's webinar is Agile Project Management, DevOps, and real-world successes. The agenda for today's conversations, we'll start out with some introductions. We've organized this webinar into 5 separate discussion topics. We'll talk about value stream automation, audit and compliance, metrics and reporting, visibility, traceability, and integrating the value stream, and then we'll wrap up. Just a few housekeeping notes before we dive in. So this webinar will last approximately 60 minutes. We'll address questions during each topic. So please make sure and use that chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. Submit any questions along the way. We'll save time at the end of each topic to address those questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So be sure and send those questions if you had them. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending a link to everyone with the recording and all the slides at the conclusion of the webinar. Information for claiming PDU or SEU credits will be sent in the post-webinar email. And finally, we encourage you all to share your learnings and join the conversation during today's webinar on Twitter using the hashtag AgileLive, hashtag Agile, or hashtag DevOps. So quick introduction for me. So my title here at VersionOne is VP of DevOps Strategy, but my job really is to help our customers optimize and streamline all aspects of their software value stream. So that includes gathering ideas and ultimately converting those ideas into features and prioritize backlogs, converting those backlog items into functional code, and then converting that code into high quality and fully compliant working software that ultimately maximizes the delivery of business value. But the good news is you don't have to listen to me for a whole hour. In this webinar, we're joined by some industry thought leaders who are currently wrestling with their own real-world challenges as they optimize the flow of value through their own software value streams. So when putting this panel together, we were looking for diversity across, I think, 2 important dimensions. We wanted diversity across industry, and we wanted diversity across overall progress towards value stream optimization. And with Ashish, we have, Ashish represents Fanatics, which is in the retail space. If you've ever purchased any sports merchandise online, any MLB or NFL or NBA merchandise, chances are you bought it from Fanatics. As Ashish will explain, Fanatics is a super dynamic environment, and they're really marching full speed towards continuous delivery. John joins us from BNSF Railways. For those that may not know, BNSF is the 2nd largest freight railroad in North America. And it's such a great company that Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway purchased it a few years back. BNSF has a lot of legacy systems. Obviously, they've been around for a long time, and they're actively looking to make software development a competitive advantage. And finally, Daniel is putting down his product hat to talk to us about how software actually gets delivered here at VersionOne as a software as a service vendor looking to streamline our DevOps machinery. Daniel has a great perspective there. So let me let these guys introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Ashish.
Hi, good morning. This is Ashish Naik. I work as Senior Manager DevOps at Fanatics. My passion has always been around reducing waste and optimizing the build-out of IT infrastructure. And since 2008, I have been an advocate for implementing Agile for IT infrastructure. I worked at several retail and e-commerce companies like Gap, Macy's, GoPro, and now I'm at Fanatics. So to give you a little bit background about Fanatics, we are the global leader in the licensed sports merchandise, and we have over 300 partnerships with various teams at the major leagues like NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. And as Dennis mentioned, if you have bought a jersey or a hat, there's a major possibility that you bought it from us, and you probably didn't notice that. So we actually run the e-commerce platform for all of these major league sports. We drive their front-end operations, inventory, marketing, warehouse, customer service for millions of products. And our business, like any other retail business, is very dynamic, where most of our sales occur during the months from October to December. And we also have the special key event dates, like, the Warriors won last year's NBA's finals. Cubs won after 105 years. So our business is very opportunistic, and hence it's very critical to integrate the Agile and DevOps to not just bring visibility to the business and strategy, but also we have a great motivation to reduce waste and resolve bottlenecks and deliver code as fast as possible, so that we can be ready to grab the opportunistic business that's always presented in our industry. So that's a little bit about myself. I'll hand it over to John.
Hello, everyone. This is John Wadick, and I am a Senior Consulting Systems Engineer here at BNSF Railway. I've been with the railroad for over almost 25 years now, and I have been on the current team, which supports build and deployment, basically, doing the same role since 2001. So early on, we were responsible for making sure Web3 applications could get built, and then the deployment. We were doing, a full-time person, probably about 30 deployments to WebSphere a week. Now since we've implemented a small amount of automation, we have seen that grow to upwards of around 150 deployments per day. So we're seeing exponential growth with automation. My expertise in DevOps is creating the orchestration and the automation that application teams need to be successful, to be able to move fast. And my goal is to remove all the human interactions in the DevOps pipeline as I possibly can. That contains even audit controls and build issues and code reviews, stuff like that. We're trying to automate the whole pipeline. But if you're familiar with the railroad, things don't move too fast around the railroad. So we started this probably about 5 years ago, so looking at automation. So we're pretty new to the field, but we've got some great ideas, and we've seen some great growth. So I'm going to pass it on to Daniel now.
Thanks, John. My name is Daniel Druso. I'm a product manager here at VersionOne. I've been in software development for about 10 years. I've been at VersionOne for about 3 of those years. And as you know, what we build here is software platforms that accelerate software delivery. And I focus my time on DevOps, more specifically on the Continuum platform. Dennis?
So thanks, you guys. As I talked about at the beginning of the webinar, we've broken today's discussion up into 5 separate topics, and we're really hoping this format will be more conversational. And we'd like you guys to participate, as we said, by submitting questions to our speakers through the chat features. At the end of each section, we'll go through those questions. Additionally, we've developed several poll questions, one before each of these sections, and our goal with these poll questions is that the results will help us tailor our conversation, but also we think they might be insightful for you guys as well. Now, the key is the only way that you can see the results of the poll is by submitting a response yourself. You don't have to submit that through the chat section. You can just click on the page right over. You just click on the response that you want. Finally, we chose these topics because we feel like they represent some of the transformation challenges across a wide variety of industries, and we wanted topics that will resonate with all stakeholders across the value stream. So we'll be talking about how important it is to unify the upstream activities, which people often refer to as Agile, and the downstream activities, which sometimes people, DevOps. Our goal is to have topics that will resonate with all stakeholders across the value stream, but this will not be a technical conversation. So with that, on to value stream automation orchestration and our first poll question. So the question is, what are your 2 current highest automation targets? And so we've identified some automation groups. This isn't a comprehensive list, but the build process, automate our testing process. Soft automated deployment is a hot topic. Compliance and governance has become really an interesting area. Release management, and then value stream orchestration, kind of the higher level automation. Looks like a lot of responses are still coming in, so I'll wait just a second. All right, it looks like it definitely looks like the testing is the hottest target right now for areas of automation, and that totally makes sense. It's probably an area that requires the most manual input in most of our release cycles right now. So the speed of the release cycle, the ability to automate testing is a direct factor in how fast we can release software. So I'll send my first question to Ashish. So Ashish, I know you guys at Fanatics have kind of a two-part strategy. Your initial goal last year was to really focus on automation and tying all the automation that you guys have into the value stream and integrating it with your Agile processes. I think now you're transitioning to the second phase, which are focusing more on metrics and traceability. Why was it so important that you guys link all of that automation together into something a little bit more, a little higher level of orchestration? Why was that your number one initiative?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis, for this question. Yeah, so in any organization, right, everybody strives for optimization, right? Especially in the retail industry, when we have a game tonight and one of the teams is going to win, and if you have to offer, like, say, coupons or some kind of new features on the website, time is very essential. And I'm sure in other industries, there are other reasons to get stuff out in a particular time frame, right? So every organization is always striving for optimization. Everyone wants things to be faster. And if you basically, like, think about the lean concepts from the manufacturing world, you'll understand that you have to draw out the whole value stream from end to end to identify the areas of waste and optimize your business process, right? So we just had a poll right now, and people are saying that, yeah, they are automating all of these tests, and that is their main target for automation. So that is a great step towards optimizing your optimizing your flow and having your code move faster to the pipeline, because the more you automate things, you're cutting down on time, you're cutting down on waste, communication within the organization. And today, if you see, today IT is all virtualized. It's very difficult to see, what is going on in different parts of the organization, right? And then on top of it, we have, like, so many different tools for different things. For testing, you use certain sort of tools. To write code, you have different tools to deploy. So it is actually very difficult to, draw out that value stream map, what you would do in a manufacturing world. So our first goal was to take take a look at all the automation, all the tools that we have, like Jira, Git, all these tools and technologies, and basically, connect them with each other, or to find certain process or like a product that would like sit on top of all of these tools and technologies. So what happens is that, you can pull in information from all the different tools and technology, all the different processes in one central location. And what that will do and is helping us now is able to see that, okay, as soon as, someone says, we want this feature to be developed, from all the way to, all the different environments it is deployed to, all the tests that are executed against it, and we can actually trace how much time it will take on each of these steps. And it has helped us to eliminate duplications of tools. It has helped us in identifying key areas that will give us biggest time savings and cost savings when we try to do automation. So definitely, it has been a great journey at Fanatics, and now we have like hundreds of microservices that we deploy using all of this orchestration, and it has saved us thousands of manual labor and helped us to eliminate a bunch of redundant processes. Our releases have gone from hours to like minutes. Sometimes, some of our microservices releases don't even take more than 2 or 3 minutes. So yeah, our first phase for this year has been fairly successful, where we are able to automate not just the testing, but the deployment process, the tracking process of the movement of the value from ideation to delivery.
Thanks, Ashish. So John, I know BNSF is a huge organization, and I know you guys have lots and lots of tools and technologies, and my presumption is that also means lots and lots of fragmented data. I've heard you guys talk a lot about a single pane of glass at BNSF. What does that mean, and why is that such a high priority for you guys?
Sure. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I think what we refer to as single pane of glass is basically like, if you would, a one-stop shop for our audit, our managers, our product owners, and our developers, each with a different view with the information in that they need pertaining to application development and application deployment. So today we have a large quantity of legacy applications that we must maintain to continue running the railroad. We're in the process of modernizing not only our transportation system, but also our revenue pipeline, which means we're moving from large monolithic applications into microservices running on a PaaS. So with that means we've introduced a whole lot more complexity to our pipeline. So no longer are we deploying a single large application. Now we're deploying a lot of smaller applications in which we need to what we want to do is keep the developers, keep the audit control, the audit people, and the managers from having to remember where to go to find the information that they need. We want all this information presented in one view, so that way people who make the decisions can make the right decisions, and then developers can have all the information that they need. We do have a large set of tools. We're predominantly a Java shop here, moving to a Spring shop, but we do support mobile application development, and we do support Microsoft application development. So therefore, we have different environments in which we don't want the managers to have, or audit, or even the developers have to worry about where they're going to get the information they need. So what we want to do is we're going to leverage Continuum to push that information all the way up to VersionOne, to workflow. And so that way, inside the value streams, then that information can be presented inside of VersionOne to the managers, to audit, to the product owners. But then our developers' view would come into Continuum, and then they would have all the information that they would have pertaining to their build, their tests, just pretty much any of the tooling that we have in our pipeline today. And so what that would give us then is it basically gives the people the information they need and provide the efficiencies so that way we can move fast. We're always trying to move faster, and that's our goal. So and we think the single pane of glass will provide us that information.
Awesome, John. Thanks. We've got a couple questions here. We're running a little bit late, so we'll submit. If you submit a question and we don't get a chance to answer it during the webinar, we'll get back to everybody that submits a question with a response. So I want to go ahead and switch, in the interest of staying on schedule, so we can get to all 5 of our topics. I want to go ahead and switch gears here to the topic of audit and compliance. And we chose this topic because, along with testing, it's also often cited as a primary challenge as organizations start thinking about how they can move faster. It's kind of counterintuitive. If you want to move fast, compliance is usually one of the drags on speed. And so we've got a quick question here. The question is your top 2 compliance challenges. We've got a list. It's there's a lot of interest in correlating actual commits back to business value. When you get to the end, I want to know exactly what features or backlog items are in a release. How do we enforce separation of duties in a DevOps setting where there's so much cross-functional activities? The change control process. Some of you guys might have change control boards that have to get involved in every release. Lots of data and tools, as John and Ashish talked about, and process consistency and controls. So if you've responded, you see the results, and it looks like almost half of you guys are focused on how do we ensure process consistency and controls as we move through activity to activity across the value stream. And I think we'll be able to talk about that a little bit as we move forward. I wanted to start out with a question to John. When I think of compliance, I'm often reminded of my first trip to BNSF, where we started every meeting there with a safety briefing, and obviously safety is a paramount importance to a company like BNSF, and it was quickly obvious to me that not only was safety important, that compliance was a huge responsibility at an organization like BNSF. Can you talk about your current requirements and steps you guys are taking to make sure that as you do move faster, you're not putting your compliance process at risk?
Sure. Yeah, as Dennis stated, that we are very compliant oriented here at the railroad. We have this typical SOX compliance. We have our internal corporate audit requirements that we need to meet, and then we also have TS requirements that we put upon ourselves. And basically the way this works is we will block applications today, go into production if they fail any one of these three compliance-ish topics. So that becomes a hindrance for the application teams. That actually slows us down. And the more you have compliance, the more you have audit issues, then that typically puts slack in your pipeline, and that makes things typically bottleneck up and slow down. So what we're looking at doing is being able to satisfy all the compliance requirements that we have today, really not changing them, but trying to take the human intervention out of the picture. So, for instance, we're looking at our change management system today. That's one of our big hang-ups is we have to create change records. They have to go through approval processes. And what we're looking at doing is, with the information that we currently have in VersionOne and a couple other systems that we have all the information already. So in our DevOps pipeline, what we're looking to do is to automate that change record creation. So with our planning part of our projects, we know the dates we plan to roll out. So why not just push all that through? And this is something I've been working on here at BNSF since probably about 2005. Initially, it was like, you're crazy, you'll never do this. But now we have the data, we have the technology, and so what we're trying to get to is when that change record, the change record is our record of authority here, and when that window opens for that change, then that will actually trigger the deployment to occur. That means that all the approvals have been done and everything else, and we're trying to capture these approvals at a good time of when it happens. So that way we're not holding up a production deployment based on needing a business owner to sign off on some testing or something like that. So that would give us our separation of duty, and then it also would ensure that there's no way really to fudge around the audits with the automation. So we take the human intervention completely out, then that kind of cleans things up for us. We have some kind of I'd call them archaic systems that we have to interface with, and this is where we're going to rely on Continuum to provide us that interface and then get that data back out to where I talked about the single pane of glass and get that information back out to the people who need it via the single pane of glass. And we also have a application portfolio management system that we need to keep updated as well. So as applications move, they move servers and stuff like that. Servers get refreshed today. it's relying on the application teams to make sure that those servers get updated in the system, that the application is now running on those. Well, you know as well as I know that it's not going to happen with people wanting to go out there and change this data. So we're tying that into the audit, into the same pipeline too, as part of our compliance, is to make sure that that data stays in sync. We take the human intervention out, and therefore the data is relying upon the information that we have already in other systems. And so we're not having to worry about people taking the time out of their day just to go do this type of duplicate effort when we already have the information. So the whole thing is our automation here is to try to remove the duplication of effort and take out the human intervention that slows down the whole process and just automate the whole pipeline.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Daniel, I've heard you talk about compliance as code. That's codifying your compliance requirements. I think that's what John was hitting on as well, so that nothing can proceed through the value stream to the next activity without proving or demonstrating full compliance. Can you talk about that and what you guys are doing here at VersionOne?
Absolutely. Thanks, Dennis. So typically, and the way we used to do it here as well, is that compliance is done at the end of the development process. So that introduces some inherent waste. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that every deployment was self-documenting and that we only invested time in deployments that can satisfy compliance. That means that the revisions that are not compliant will not make it through the value stream, and we will not invest any time in software that is not releasable. And by doing that, we eliminate unnecessary waste, and we get better lead time. So we are effectively embedding the compliance testing into the value stream as an activity within a phase of our value stream. And this gives us two main benefits. The first one is that, of course, we don't waste time. But the second one, the big one, is that when we get to the end, every revision is compliant and has all the supporting documentation to prove it. So no additional compliance testing is necessary, and we can deliver faster.
Thanks, Daniel. Moving on to our next session, we're going to talk about flow metrics and reporting. It seems like when I visit with a lot of you guys, the metrics that are most interesting are metrics related to flow, but there are some other metrics that are equally as important as well. And when I say flow, what I mean are the general class of metrics that we've kind of leveraged in our lean manufacturing setting and transpose those into the world of software. That's a big area of interest, but we're also focused on operational metrics, and those could be things like builds per day and deployments per week, or commits per unit of time, just general metrics that come out of the DevOps process. And then there's a kind of an emerging set of metrics around technical risk. It's now, we're able to make predictions about technical risk using some of the data that we have at our disposal. It looks like there's a good spread of results here, and it looks like operational metrics are definitely a top priority for organizations. And I think that's a great first step, and that's a great place to start. So I wanted to, I guess, direct this question to Ashish. As we discussed, as you mentioned, your primary focus was around value stream automation and integrating all the kind of pockets of automation into a unified kind of orchestrated flow. Now you're using that investment to simplify your ability to capture these key metrics related to how the value stream is performing. Now that you've incorporated this automation into the value stream, it seems like it's much easier for you to generate the metrics you're looking for. What are your priorities around metrics and reporting, and kind of what's your next steps there, Ashish?
Yeah, definitely. Our phase one, we did automate most of our pipeline, and this definitely sets us to start collecting metrics across the value stream and start leveraging the metrics that we collect to make our processes much better. So I look at it almost in like two different ways, right, or two parts. The first part, I look at it as how can I use this matrix to further optimize my flow. So for example, something that is of key interest to me is wait time and touch time. So with wait time, what I mean is if suppose a developer commits a code into the repository, but there is a manual testing to be done for this code, then someone has to actually get to that build to actually test it, and the wait that takes between a developer committing the code to someone picking up the code is of great interest to me, because then it kind of gives me a matrix that, oh, we need to automate more, or this is the particular area where we need to really automate. That way, as soon as someone commits a code, it is also tested, and that kind of like saves the time. So I think wait time is very important to me in optimizing the pipeline. Touch time. For example, what touch time means is if I'm executing a test, if it is going to take 1 hour, and for each commit a 1 hour test is going to run, it's not going to help the automation, right? Automation is going to be hinder your progress. So even touch time is very important in my opinion, because that tells me whether I can run this process synchronously or asynchronously. Also, touch time is like when we are deploying to application servers and stuff, we need to understand how we can parallelize so that, the outage or the capacity that we reduce at the time of deployment on our websites that outage window is like as short as possible, or if you're like taking out some servers and reducing the capacity, that time limit is as minimal as possible. So definitely these two are very important that I'll be looking at this year coming into 2018. And other areas that I feel are important as well are what is the cyclometric complexity of the code, what code coverage we have, what security compliance we have. If we can somehow take all of this data and apply like something sort of like artificial intelligence or machine learning to all of this data, what we could do is maybe, we could like come up with a scale of 1 to 100, and it just gives us pops out a number. And then all the complex crunching of numbers that needs to happen, if it happens all behind the scene, then, it's very easier for a release manager to not actually spend several hours going through the CAB meeting and seeing that, oh, do you have this, do you have that? What about these test results? What about those test results? If they could get a number between 0 to 100 that your release is like, say, 89 on that scale or something like that, then we can go and release with confidence. So I think I'm laying out a vision over here probably in terms of metrics that what I would like to see. But yeah, if we could get these two aspects in the matrix, it would really improve the release process in our organization. Other areas will also definitely help is what is the average time to delivery from ideation to prod rollout. So today the business is talking about, oh, we want these features. But by the time they say, yes, we want it, to the point it is actually live on the site, we really don't have a clear visibility on how much time it takes to do those kind of things. And also it kind of ties really well into how you want to budget, how do we do planning from a resourcing perspective. So these are like several different metrics that I am interested going into 2018. And given that, we have got most of our flows automated, I'm now going to start taking more interest into seeing how we can leverage the platform to get these kind of metrics.
So thanks, Ashish. And I think you talked a little bit about some of the technical risk. I think that's a nice segue to pose a question to Daniel. Daniel, I know you're working closely with our customers and with the team here at VersionOne I don't think we're to machine learning yet or artificial intelligence, but you're finding a lot of information along the value stream that certainly helps us predict technical risk and gives us tools that we probably didn't have just a year ago. Can you talk about some of these innovations and where this space is going?
Sure. Thank you, Dennis. So traditionally, we've seen that there's a disconnect between the strategy side of the house and the development side of the house. So the business doesn't generally have knowledge of the technical risks that exist in a release. For example, cyclomatic complexity may not be meaningful to a business user, but the consequences of it have some impacts in the real world. So that could be a delay, that could be decreased quality. So very important to include these in the process. So what we're doing is that by connecting this data, we can measure technical risk in new ways that will provide us visibility across the entire business. So for example, with code complexity is something that we've known about for a long time, but now we can understand the complexity of features or even stories, which is immensely useful for PMs like me or even dev managers. Another useful metrics that we look at is change arrivals, and this helps us understand the rate of change before a release, which was not visible to a PM or a dev manager prior. That also ties in with risk. And the same with row commits. So basically we can identify code commits that are essentially lost value until we associate them with a relevant work item. And these metrics allow us to see how dynamic the code base is leading up to a release. So overall, we're creating a common vocabulary across the value stream, and that helps us quantify risk in a much more precise way.
So one of the things we didn't talk about there was a lot of interest in with this audience is our operational metrics. Ashish or Daniel, I'll start with you, Ashish. Can you just talk briefly about more traditional operational DevOps metrics and any of those that are especially important to you?
Definitely. We would want to take a look at how much time each deployment takes, how many releases we are doing per month, what is the average time per release, and then these are like really good metrics to know because it definitely helps us either like train the release staff or identify if there are any gaps within our automation or where we should focus more so that we can cut down on the downtime onto our systems.
So Daniel, I know that we've got we put a lot of thought into the operational metrics here ourselves at VersionOne. Can you talk about some of those metrics quickly and describe which ones you're focused most on?
Yes, absolutely. So what we've been able to gain a lot of visibility into now are things like the number of files that we are changing with a given release, the number of commits that are going into a given release, how many delivery events we have over a span of time, how frequently we are releasing. With this new paradigm, we find that we are delivering software more frequently. We are also looking at things like the number of builds, how many of those builds are broken, the number of pipeline runs, and those are the main things, along with defects by phase. That's a big one that we've looked at as well.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Moving on now to the next section. I want to address the topic of visibility and traceability. And when we talk about visibility and traceability, what we're really focused on are kind of at the business value level, or being able to trace, say, backlog items or features. So things that make sense to the business as opposed to artifacts or binary objects or commits or deployments. How do we track features as they flow through the value stream? How do we know where they are, what environments they're in, that kind of stuff? How do we provide this visibility across all stakeholders? And how do we find that traceability that is so important for compliance as we look at moving towards a continuous delivery model? So See a pattern here. Onto the survey question. One of the key factors in reducing batch size is visibility and traceability, understanding exactly what's where. The better there's a direct relationship between the level of visibility and traceability and our ability to decrease batch size. So as we think about reducing batch size, even if your goal is not to deploy faster, I think it's been widely discussed and talked about how batch size is a big factor in risk. It's a big factor in efficiency. Smaller batches are less risky and more efficient. So here are a couple of different possible constraints to batch size. And the thing that I find most interesting is compliance. This is really interesting. Compliance is not, from the responses that we're getting so far, is not an obstacle. It's much more likely to be visibility. Visibility is the biggest challenge. So switching gears here, the challenge, visibility has been so crucial in lean manufacturing world, and as we talked about earlier, a lot of us are trying to take some of those lean practices and bring them into the world of software delivery, but we have a specific challenge, and that is when we convert a description of some feature or a backlog item, when we convert that natural language description into code, it becomes much more difficult to track. That particular unit of value becomes much harder to track through the world of software just because of the nature of software. And I know, John, I'll direct this to you. We all kind of face the same visibility challenge of that downstream commit as it moves through the value stream. Can you tell us about, your challenges at BNSF and what you guys are doing specifically to solve the visibility traceability problem?
Sure. Yeah, what we've seen in the past, is we really struggle with release management and knowing actually what is in a release. We know there's code, we know there's files, we know there's configs and blah, 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 but we never really knew what the business impact of that was. And so what we're trying to do now is, what we are doing actually, is we're integrating each of our Git commits and our TFS commits through Continuum all the way up to version 1 and tying those to a story. So now, up in version 1, we can drill into a backlog, into a story, into a defect, and we can actually see what commits have been applied to that story. Inside the value stream, as that moves along, then we can see how those changes, those commits are progressing. And so that really is really helpful for us around our release management model and making sure that we have everything we need covered in the release going out the door. So the key thing is getting those commits up into version 1. Now, one thing we did find that kind of stumbled on this is it really provides a good way to do just kind of a quick code review. Say, for instance, you have a junior developer who you don't have a lot of confidence in making some code changes. You as a senior developer can go in there and look at that story that commit was done, and the way we have it architected, you can actually drill down into the GitHub repository and see a difference and see what changes that developer actually made into what files and everything else, and then the actual code changes or what was done. And so that way it kind of gives you just a high-level look, or just a real quick cursory look as to what that person was doing. And then, if there's really no need to go through do a whole code review, then that's great. And now what that does is that provides us with faster times and less bottlenecks and stuff like that, and gets the product out the door faster.
So Daniel, as a product manager, kind of speaking for all the product managers out there, or people that are on the product side, how important is it to you to be able to understand, take a feature that maybe spans a lot of different backlog items, how important is it to understand how that feature is distributed across various stages of the value stream, or visibility in business terms at that technical level?
Thank you, Dennis. Well, I think it's pretty crucial for a couple of reasons. The first one is that we want to have a sense of what parts of that feature can be delivered as they go through the value stream versus waiting for the whole thing to be done. And really seeing the content allows us to complete tasks such as release notes, telling the end user what part of that feature is available now. That's from one front. And then from the second front is that it allows us to forecast when the entire feature will be delivered. So knowing what is flowing through, what has been delivered versus what has not, it's a very good mechanism for us to know when a particular feature will be done.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. All right. On to our last section here, and it's all about value stream integration. And it really, in one way or another, it's been part of what we've been talking about during this whole hour. We have a lot of fragmented, siloed data in our value streams, and the opportunity is how do we take that data and integrate it into and unify all the different steps of our value stream in a way that's meaningful and actionable and helps us ultimately streamline the value stream. So the question is, what's the biggest advantage of unifying all this data across the value stream? So unifying planning with delivery and pulling all this information together. Is it to understand how features are flowing towards end users? Is it simplifying compliance? Is it helping us understand where our bottlenecks are and facilitating continuous improvement? Or is it helping us to understand dependencies or risk, where we might be in trouble, and by highlighting that with better visibility and traceability, we can eliminate some of those, some of that risk. Looks like clearly the need to improve quality and risk is a chief driver. So traceability and better through traceability and visibility, we can improve our quality. We can eliminate risk. That's awesome. And thanks for the feedback in those surveys. I think it's been really helpful. So let me start with Ashish. Ashish, I think you're an interesting person to speak to this topic because you guys use Jira as your planning tool, and why was it so important to integrate and connect those Jira issues back through the rest of your value stream and all the automation that you've already put in place?
Right. So Dennis, we have several dev teams working in different time zones across like the globe and in multiple offices, and there are hundreds of microservices that are being developed at the same time. Implementing any business feature is very complex because the business feature can, like, say, be simple, like implement a couponing system or something like that, right? But then that means it touches a lot of back-end systems, and it gets very complicated. So we definitely use Jira to plan our deliverables, to do our capacity planning, our budgeting, almost all of it. And all of these teams are like having their own boards and they're having their own little stories. But the challenge that when you're working across the, lot of teams, and when things are moving at a very fast rate, it's very difficult to know the cross dependencies, and especially in the microservices world, everybody is working on a small feature and it has to consume an API from some another service. So it quickly gets like very complex. And what is really important for us is, any planning tool is as good as you keep it up to date, right? And, traditionally we have been trying to do it manually, and it's very difficult to determine like if my application is at this phase of development, I'm dependent on 5 other microservices, where they are. So that whole visibility is always pretty challenging. So integrating Jira into the whole value stream brings a great value and solves some of these visibility challenges, is because if I have this orchestrating tool which is sitting in top of all of my tools and technologies, what is happening is as soon as I deploy a code for a particular service in, say, a QA environment or something like that, we have that ability to write back to a Jira ticket that, oh, okay, in this build there are like these 10 tickets that were addressed, and right now it is being deployed into QA environment, and and then as soon as the testing happens, you can post the testing that at least the tests were completed. So we can also use these automation to also like bundle up that, okay, in this build, these are all the releases, these are all the tickets that are being addressed, and that itself is your release notes as well. So opening change record, like automating and connecting into change record systems to build your release notes are now going to also be more accurate. Today, we are talking to a lot of different people to understand, oh, what is in this release? It just is build 45, but what build 45 means? So it's very important that we are able to, with this tooling now in place, we are able to tie back what are Jira tickets are being addressed as part of which code. And it also enables future down the lane to even like troubleshoot that if we start seeing certain issues in production, then what all tickets went in this release. And we can actually tie the Git commits to the Jira tickets and start making this correlation. So it also cuts down and improves the quality of the code, and also cuts down on the troubleshooting time it takes, because we exactly know what went when and how.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. So Daniel, if Ashish focused on why it's important to connect the backlog item or the kind of the planning, the business motivator, to all of the audit trail that it generates as that particular unit of value moves through the value stream. DevOps is famous. It's widely acknowledged that one of the things that DevOps really does well is leverage point solutions at various points in the value stream. And so what happens is we end up with a lot of different DevOps tools. Can you talk about some of the challenges here at VersionOne with all the different point tools and point solutions in our value stream, and how we integrate those together?
Absolutely. So like we just said, ALM tools such as VersionOne Lifecycle or Jira or TeamForge, this is where the business value connects to the code, and that linkage is really critical. Without that, the whole process breaks. But the second kind of integration, kind of a big one in DevOps, is the technical tools. So your version control system, your build system, your delivery system. So here we have that group looks like GitHub, Jenkins, and we have in-house deployment tools. So we know very well that in the world of DevOps, everything is fragmented. And most shops like us use a combination of off-the-shelf tools, and some of them build in-house. So it's important for a platform to be able to interact with all the tools in that chain. So at VersionOne, we have a number of tools that we don't want to get rid of. So we need a platform that knows how to interact with all of these tools, since they perform crucial functions in the value stream. So what we really want is to seamlessly integrate with all of the tools so we can understand what's flowing through the value stream. And without this integration, we really lose visibility of the contents and what's going on in the value stream. So we really have a real heterogeneous environment here. So it's important for our delivery platform to properly aggregate all this data so that it knows how to interact with all these tools. So for us, it's kind of crucial to know what's going on, and for the platform to translate that into the flow of value.
So Daniel, one other question. We've talked a lot about integrating tools, and the reality is that a big portion, maybe even a majority of the activity, the work that gets done across a value stream is still manual, and it'll be manual for a while. how do you account, or how do we here at VersionOne, how do we account for those manual activities? Because we still need to track from a flow metric standpoint. We need to account for that time, and we need to validate what gets done from a compliance and control standpoint.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that it would be naive for anybody to think that everything in your value stream will be automated. In the release world, we have things like release notes. In our case, we have things like release videos, and things that, simply will always involve a human. So what we've really leveraged there is the ability for Continuum to allow us to configure which activities are automated and which are manual. So for the manual ones, we are able to either estimate how much time generally a task takes, so we can get both wait time and touch time. And basically, we've been also able to leverage that interaction with external systems. So if a task is repeatable, we kind of know how long it will take, and Continuum basically allows us to configure that, and we get very good feedback as to what the process is and where the bottlenecks are.
So thanks, Daniel. That we've now been through all 5 topics. I have one last survey question for you, and this one is really, it's the question that I'm in some ways most interested in. Of these 5 topics, I would love to know from you guys which ones are your most critical priority right now. Which of these 5 areas are challenges that you're most wrestling with? I find that interesting. And as the responses come in, it's not surprising to me that automation and visibility are the 2 main challenges. I think that's something we see in a lot of the customers that we work with. So just want to, that concludes the webinar. I wanted to thank you guys all for joining us today. Certainly thanks for your interaction. I know there were a lot of poll questions, and I appreciate you guys helping us with all that. We plan to write some blog posts leveraging that data that you guys have given us. We hope this has been a valuable discussion as you think about the challenges you face in your organization, and we'd love to continue the conversation with you after the webinar. Mark your calendar. Our next webinar is in partnership with DevOps.com and Scaled Agile, and that'll be on the topic of building your continuous delivery pipeline. I think that'll be a really awesome webinar. I'd encourage you to sign up for that. Have a great day, and thanks.